The snow had been falling since early morning, soft flakes drifting down like tiny shreds of silence. Christmas Eve usually brought a warm feeling with it, a sense of comfort, of family, of lights glowing through windows while the world softened around the edges. But that morning, as I drove to the office, something inside me felt heavier than the gray sky. I didn't know exactly why. Maybe it was the way the year had gone. Maybe it was exhaustion after 12 long years of loyalty. Or maybe it was the strange tone in my boss's voice the day before when he said, "Make sure you're in early tomorrow. We need to talk." Those words kept replaying in my mind, and even the holiday lights on the lampposts did little to ease the sense of unease sitting in my chest. I had spent over a decade in that building. I knew every floor tile, every coffee stain on the break room counter, every squeaky hinge on every office door. I knew the company better than most. I had watched employees come and go, departments rise and fall, systems fall apart and rebuild. I had stayed through every crisis, every late-night call, every impossible deadline. Just months ago, my boss, Richard, had said I was family, and maybe, foolishly, some part of me believed that. But as I walked into the lobby that morning, something about the quiet told me this wouldn't be a normal day. Only half the office was there. People were moving slowly, already in holiday mode. A few coworkers waved, but even their smiles felt thin. The receptionist avoided looking at me completely, and that was unusual. She always asked about my day, my weekend, my plans. Today she kept her eyes glued to her screen, as if she didn't want to make contact. I brushed off the odd feeling and tried to act normal, even though a part of me felt like the walls were closing in. When I reached my desk, the first thing I noticed was a folded piece of paper sitting on my keyboard. My name was written on the front in neat handwriting that did not belong to me. For a moment, I just stared at it. Messages like that usually meant one of two things, something good or something very, very bad. I unfolded it slowly. "Please see me in my office at 9 a.m. Richard, 9 a.m. Just one short hour later. My stomach tightened. I tried to breathe normally, but my chest felt too tight. I sat down, turned on my monitor, and pretended to work while my mind raced. Had I made a mistake? Had something gone wrong with the budget files? Had someone complained about me? I couldn't think of a single reason that would justify the tension I felt, but my body reacted anyway. My hands shook slightly on the mouse. At 8:58, I stood up and walked toward the corner office. Each step felt like walking into a storm. When I reached his door, it was already open. Richard sat inside, hands clasped on the desk, face unreadable. Behind him, the city looked peaceful under the soft white snow. It was such a pretty view, too pretty for what I was about to hear. "Come in," he said without looking up. I stepped inside, closed the door carefully, and waited. He finally raised his eyes, and something about the coldness in them made my breath hitch. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "We're letting you go." Those words hit harder than he probably expected. For a moment, I couldn't speak. It felt like the world around me stopped moving. 12 years of dedication, erased in a single sentence. 12 years of my life, gone without warning, without discussion, without even an explanation offered. I don't understand. I finally managed. "Why?" He sighed, leaned back in his chair, and slid a folder toward himself as if trying to look busy. "It's nothing personal. We're restructuring, eliminating certain roles. Yours happens to be one of them. Nothing personal." The phrase echoed like a cruel joke. "But you said just last month." "That was last month," he cut in. "This is now." There was no apology, no compassion, just a cold, rehearsed decision that he'd probably celebrated making. Maybe he thought he was saving money. Maybe he thought I was replaceable. Maybe he assumed I would leave quietly, broken and defeated. He pushed a stapled packet toward me. "Sign these. HR will process your termination. Your access will be disabled by the end of the day." It took everything in me not to break right there. I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask how loyalty meant nothing. I wanted to walk out without signing anything. But instead, I picked up the papers with trembling hands. Not because I agreed with any of it, but because I needed time to think, time to plan what came next. Because even as he spoke, I remembered something he didn't know, something he had forgotten entirely. The files. The files he thought I never saw. The files he thought he had deleted. The files he assumed were buried so deep that no one, not even me, would ever find them. But I had found them. Months ago, while cleaning up the shared archive, I stumbled across a hidden folder buried under layers of encrypted junk. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But when I opened it, I realized exactly what it was: the truth. The kind of truth that could make a man like Richard lose everything. He didn't know that I had copies. He didn't know that I had spent the last few weeks quietly piecing everything together. He didn't know that firing me was the worst timing he could have chosen. "Any questions?" he asked sharply. I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I felt was a strange calm washing over me, like the eye of a storm. "No," I said softly. "No questions." He nodded, already dismissing me. "Good. And Merry Christmas." The words stabbed deeper than he probably intended. I walked out of his office without responding. The moment the door closed behind me, something inside me shifted. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Something stronger. Something determined. I returned to my desk and sat down slowly. My coworkers were whispering, pretending not to watch me, pretending not to know what just happened. But their eyes gave everything away. I ignored them and took a deep breath. I didn't have much time. If my access was being cut today, I had to move fast. My computer hummed softly as I logged in. One more time. One last time before everything changed. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Then I opened the hidden drive I had created months ago. Inside it were copies of every file Richard hoped would never see daylight. Evidence of decisions he made behind closed doors, documents he signed but pretended not to know about, financial moves that would make the company and the authorities very interested in asking him a long list of questions. I felt my pulse pounding as I looked through the folders. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. This was justice. Because no one destroys 12 years of someone's life without consequences. I reached for a flash drive inside my drawer, but before I plugged it in, I heard footsteps approaching. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I froze. Someone was walking toward my desk. Someone who had no reason to be on this floor. And then, right as the footsteps stopped behind me, I heard a voice I didn't expect. A voice that changed everything. "Hey, we need to talk. Now." I turned, heart racing, because the person standing there shouldn't have known anything. They shouldn't have been involved. They shouldn't have even been near me at that moment. Yet there they were. And somehow they knew. I swallowed hard, realizing the situation was far more complicated than I thought. That the files weren't the only secret in this building. That someone else had been watching far longer than I realized. And suddenly, the story I thought I was living wasn't the real story at all. Not yet. And that was when the real fear began creeping in beneath my skin, because I didn't know if this person was here to help me or silence me. Everything depended on their next words. And they stepped closer, leaning in, whispering something that sent chills through my entire body. "Richard wasn't supposed to fire you today. This changes everything." Before I could speak, they grabbed my arm. "Come with me. And don't look back." I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know who else was involved. But I did know one thing. Christmas Eve had just become the most dangerous night of my life. And the files I thought would save me, they might be the reason everything was about to fall apart. The moment their hand wrapped around my arm, everything inside me jolted. I didn't know if I should pull away, yell, or follow quietly like they expected. But something in their eyes, urgent, steady, and strangely familiar, made me decide not to resist. I let them guide me down the hallway, past the cubicles, past the confused glances from coworkers who had no idea what was happening. The office noise around us felt muffled, as if someone had turned down the volume on the world, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. We moved quickly toward the back stairwell. They didn't say a word until the door closed behind us. The stairwell was cold and dim, the kind of place no one ever used unless the elevators broke, which rarely happened. Their breath came out in small puffs as they looked around to make sure we were alone. Only then did they finally speak. "You can't stay at your desk," they said quietly. "They're watching you." My pulse jumped. "Who's watching me?" They exhaled slowly, as if deciding how much to tell me. "More people than you think." I recognized the voice now. It belonged to Karen, from finance. She was always quiet, always observant, always the one people overlooked. I'd seen her slip into meetings unnoticed, pop up with numbers no one else could find, and disappear again like she was part of the walls. I never thought she paid much attention to me. But now, looking at her more closely, I realized she had been paying attention to everything. "You knew about my termination?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "But what you don't know is that it wasn't supposed to happen today." "So when was it supposed to happen?" She hesitated. "Next month. After they finish things." That pause sent a chill straight down my spine. "Finished what?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. "Before I explain anything, you have to be honest with me. Do you still have the files?" I stiffened, instinctively glancing toward the stairwell door as if someone might burst in. "Why are you asking?" "Because," she said, "if you still have them, you're in danger. If you don't have them, then we all are." For a long second, I didn't respond. I didn't know if I could trust her. I didn't know if she was trying to help or trying to trap me. But she watched me with an expression that didn't look like intimidation or manipulation. It looked like fear. And fear wasn't something people faked easily. "I have them," I said softly. "Copies." Her shoulders relaxed, but only a little. "Good. That might be the only thing keeping you safe right now." "Safe from what?" I asked. She looked up the stairwell, then back at me. "Safe from the people protecting Richard." The words hit me like a punch. Protecting him from what? "I've only seen files that show." "I know what's in them," she interrupted. "I've seen some of it too. But that's not the whole picture. Whatever you found, it's just the surface." My head was spinning. I had spent weeks digging through those hidden folders, reading every note, every financial record, every questionable invoice. I thought I knew the extent of it. I thought the danger ended with his part in all of it. But now I wasn't so sure. "Why are you helping me?" I asked quietly. She gave a small, humorless smile. "Because I've been trying to expose this for months, and everything I've collected keeps disappearing. Every file I save, every email I send myself, every folder I hide, someone erases it. Only yours stayed untouched, and I didn't understand why until today." "Why?" I asked. "Because they didn't know you had them," she said. "And they still don't. That's why firing you early changes everything." My chest tightened again. I tried to process her words, to make sense of what was happening, but every explanation only made the situation darker. "Who else knows about this?" "I don't know for sure," she said. "But I know it's not just Richard. He's not working alone. I've seen things he couldn't have done by himself." She pulled out her phone, hesitated, and slipped it back into her pocket. "I can't show you anything here. We're too exposed." I glanced over the metal railing of the stairwell. The floors below us looked empty, quiet, but the darkness made it impossible to see who could be standing just out of sight. "Where can we talk?" I whispered. "Not here. Not in the office." She checked her watch. "We have about 15 minutes before IT locks your access. And before someone comes looking." It wasn't lost on me that she said someone instead of HR or security. It made the whole situation feel heavier. "We need to get your files out," she continued. "All of them. After that, I'll explain everything." Something in her voice made me believe she knew far more than she was saying. Maybe too much. We moved down the stairs quickly, stopping at the second-floor landing. She peeked through the narrow window in the door, checking the hallway. When she nodded, we slipped through quietly, walking fast but trying not to look suspicious. The second floor was mostly storage and unused offices, rarely anyone around, especially on Christmas Eve. Karen led me into an old conference room with dusty windows and a projector that hadn't worked in years. She closed the door behind us and took a deep breath, like she had been waiting for this moment. "Tell me exactly what you found," she said. I pulled out the USB drive from my pocket and set it on the table. "The financial reports, the offshore accounts, the emails approving transactions that don't match the company records. And," I swallowed hard, "the contracts." Her eyes widened slightly. "You saw those?" "Yes," I said. "They were buried under encrypted folders. I almost didn't open them." She pressed her fingers against her forehead, pacing slowly as she processed what I said. "That means you found the old files, the ones they thought were gone. What exactly are they?" I asked. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her expression serious. Proof that the company has been used for things it was never meant for. Illegal things. The kind that don't just get people fired, they get people investigated. I felt my stomach drop. I thought I knew what I was dealing with. I thought it was just Richard's schemes. But this sounded bigger. Much bigger. And you think someone is trying to shut this down? I asked. She nodded. Not shut it down. Cover it up. I sat down slowly. And firing me early, what does that mean? It means they panicked, she said. Someone told Richard to get rid of you before you could do anything with what you knew. But firing you today wasn't part of the original plan. That means something changed. She lowered her voice even more. That means someone might know you were digging. My heart pounded harder. I was suddenly aware of every sound in the hallway outside, every whisper of movement in the air vents, every flicker of the old fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above us. What do we do now? I asked. She walked closer and leaned against the table. First, we get your files out of here safely. But we need to be smart. If we download them now, it'll trigger an alert. They'll know. So what's the plan? She looked at me with a seriousness that made my skin prickle. We need to move everything manually, piece by piece, and we need to leave without making a sound. Why so careful? Because, she said softly, if they find out what we know before we leave this building, we won't get another chance. As the room fell silent, I suddenly realized the truth. I wasn't just dealing with a cruel boss anymore. I was caught in something far more dangerous, something I wasn't prepared for. And the files I thought were my protection might be the very thing that put both of us in deeper danger than we understood. Karen took a step toward the door, listening carefully for footsteps. Stay close, she whispered. And whatever happens, don't trust anyone else. I nodded, even though my voice felt stuck. Because deep down, I felt the same thing she did. Something was coming. And the worst part was, we had no idea what, or who, was waiting on the other side of that door. Karen opened the door, just a crack, and listened for a moment. The hallway outside was still, too still, like the whole floor was holding its breath. She motioned for me to follow, and together we slipped out quietly, moving past dusty storage rooms and empty offices. The air felt colder here, and I kept glancing back, feeling like someone might be right behind us even if I couldn't see them. We reached the stairwell again and made our way down one floor. Karen stopped on the first floor landing and looked through the window. This floor was usually busy, shipping, supplies, paperwork, but on Christmas Eve it looked almost abandoned. A few lights flickered in the distance. The hum of a printer echoed faintly from somewhere around the corner. But I saw no movement. This way, she whispered. We pushed through the door and walked down the hallway with our steps soft and careful. My mind raced with everything she told me. The files I had found, the offshore accounts, the secret contracts, the missing money, were only a piece of something much bigger. Something that had been hidden long before I stumbled into it. I had thought my boss acted alone. But the way Karen talked, it sounded like he was just one part of a much wider plan. Who else is involved? I asked quietly as we walked. She didn't look at me. People above him. Higher-ups. No, she said. Higher than that. I wanted to ask more, but she shook her head slightly, a silent warning. The hallway might have been empty, but she made it clear we were never really alone. We entered another unused office on the far side of the building. Karen locked the door behind us, then closed the blinds. The room was small, cluttered with old binders and boxes of outdated manuals. A single desk sat in the center, covered in dust. She brushed it off quickly and pulled out her laptop. We'll work from here, she said. I set my own flash drive on the table. What exactly are we doing? She turned her screen toward me. We're going to hide the files again. Somewhere smarter. Somewhere they can access. Every system in this company is monitored. Every download is tracked. Every move is logged. But if we break the files down and move them in fragments, we can scatter them. Scatter? Yes. Encrypt them with separate keys. Store them across multiple secure locations. Even if they find one part, it won't make sense without the others. It sounded overwhelming. Complicated. Risky. But she spoke with confidence, like she had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Why didn't you do this earlier? I asked. Her expression tightened. I tried, but every time I got close, someone shut me down. Someone with more control than even Richard. I sat back in the chair, trying to understand. So there's someone else inside the company helping him? Maybe more than one, she said. I've seen things that don't add up. Files disappearing at the exact same minute. System logs wiped clean. Messages replaced with blank text. That's not the work of one person. That's a network. A network doing what? I whispered. She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, covering the truth. Her answer left a heavy silence between us. I looked around the small room, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had spent 12 years believing this company was solid, honest, stable. The kind of place you could build a life around. I had trusted the people here. I had trusted Richard. And now everything was twisted in ways I never saw coming. As Karen worked, typing quickly, I watched the hallway through a thin gap in the blinds. The lights flickered once. Then again. The printer noise stopped abruptly. Something about the silence put me on edge. Karen, I whispered. Someone's coming. She looked up just as a shadow passed near the doorway. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, growing louder. She closed her laptop halfway and motioned for me to stay quiet. My heart thudded as the shadow paused right outside our room. Whoever it was didn't knock. They just stood there. After a few long seconds, the footsteps continued down the hall. Karen exhaled. We don't have much time. She reopened her laptop. I handed her the flash drive, and she connected it cautiously. The folder opened, showing the copies I had taken. Seeing them again made my hands shake a little. These weren't just numbers and documents. They were live wires. Dangerous in the wrong hands. Dangerous even in mine. What exactly did you find? She asked again, her eyes scanning the files. Transactions sent off the record, I said. Accounts created under false names. Contracts signed with organizations that don't exist. She clicked through quickly. These aren't just off-the-record transactions. These are shell routes, hidden channels. And the contracts. She clicked one open. I watched her face carefully. As she read, her expression darkened. These contracts aren't just illegal, she whispered. They're coordinated. Someone's funding something they shouldn't be funding. Who? I asked. She shook her head. Not here. I can't risk saying it here. I swallowed. Is it dangerous? Yes. The answer hung in the air like smoke. Before she could continue, another set of footsteps echoed in the hallway. These ones were faster, heavier, more purposeful. Karen snapped her laptop shut and signaled me to stay still. My breath caught as the footsteps stopped again, this time longer than before. They're checking rooms, she mouthed. I felt cold all over. The doorknob rattled lightly, as if someone was testing it. Karen's hand hovered over the light switch, ready to cut everything into darkness. The rattling stopped. Seconds stretched out like hours. Then the footsteps resumed, moving farther down the hallway. When we finally felt safe enough to breathe, Karen leaned closer. They know someone is here. We have to move. I grabbed the flash drive, sliding it into my pocket. Where now? Somewhere they won't expect. She slung her bag across her shoulder. But we can't leave the building yet. Why not? She turned toward the door, eyes sharp with worry. Because once we step outside, we lose access to anything that could help us. And because they may already be watching the exits. My whole body tensed. So we're trapped inside. For now, she said. But we still have one advantage. They don't know we're working together. And they don't know I have the files. Not yet, she said. But if they even suspect it, everything will change. We walked back toward the stairwell, sticking close to the walls. Every sound made me tense. Every shadow felt threatening. The empty office building didn't feel like a workplace anymore. It felt like a maze designed to trap us. As we reached the end of the hallway, Karen stopped abruptly and held out an arm to block me. What now? I whispered. She pointed toward the main lobby below. Hidden between the railings, a man stood near the elevator. Not security, not HR, someone I had never seen before. He wasn't wearing a badge. His posture wasn't relaxed like an employee waiting for a friend. He was watching, waiting, listening. Karen leaned close to my ear. He's not with our company. My breath hitched. Then who is he? I don't know, she whispered. But he came here for a reason. The man checked his watch, then scanned the area again before walking toward the east wing, the direction of my department. Karen's voice tightened. "They're looking for you." I pressed back against the wall, feeling the weight of everything pressing down harder. This wasn't just a workplace issue anymore. Not just a toxic boss. Not just hidden files. Whatever was happening went deeper than either of us had realized. Karen grabbed my sleeve. "We have to stay ahead of them. And we don't have much time." We moved again, this time down a darker hallway. I could feel the tension tightening with every step, like the building itself was closing in around us. The deeper we went, the more it felt like we were no longer just uncovering secrets. We were becoming part of them. And somewhere inside this building, someone else knew that. Someone who wasn't going to let us walk out easily. Karen led the way down the narrow hallway, moving fast but quietly. I stayed close behind her, my eyes scanning every shadow, every doorframe, every flicker of movement. The building felt different now, like the walls were listening, like the air itself carried warnings. It was no longer an office I knew for 12 years. It felt like unfamiliar territory where every wrong step could expose us. We slipped into a storage room near the old archives. Karen locked the door behind us, then switched on a small desk lamp instead of the main lights. The dim glow barely reached the corners of the room, making everything look sharper, tenser. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. "We're running out of safe areas," she whispered. "They're sweeping the building." "Looking for me?" I asked. "They're looking for anyone who doesn't belong in the open floors. Anyone moving around without permission. Meaning us." She didn't deny it. The small room felt suffocating, crowded with metal shelves stacked with binders and boxes. I leaned on one of the shelves, trying to steady myself. "Karen, who was that man in the lobby? The one without the badge?" "I don't know," she replied. "But he wasn't here by accident. And the fact that he walked toward your department makes it pretty clear someone told him where to look." My stomach tightened. "So someone inside tipped him off?" "It's possible," she said. "Maybe more than one person." She pulled her laptop out again and opened it carefully, shielding the screen as if someone could be watching through the walls. "I need to show you something." I glanced toward the door. "Are you sure we should stay here?" "No," she said bluntly, "but we don't have a choice." She typed quickly, opening a hidden folder buried deep in her system. The files loaded slowly, the progress bar inching along like it knew time mattered. "These are logs," she said softly. "Back-end access records. Things only admin-level monitors can see." "What am I looking at?" She pointed toward a series of entries highlighted in red. "These show when someone accessed restricted sections of a server. Look at the timestamps." The times jumped out at me. Late nights, early mornings, hours most employees were long gone. And then something else caught my eye. My name. I froze. "Why is my name in there? I wasn't even logged in at those times." "I know," she said. "Someone used your credentials. Someone wanted it to look like you were involved." My breath caught. "Involved in what?" She clicked another file, and a set of encrypted folders appeared. The same encrypted folders I had found only days before, the ones tied to the offshore accounts and hidden contracts. "They planted these under your profile," she said. "If things went wrong, you would have been their scapegoat." I felt the room tilt for a moment. My knees weakened, and I had to grab the shelf to steady myself. So I wasn't just collateral. They were setting me up. "That's why firing you today was dangerous. You were supposed to be dismissed later, after the files were fully tied to you. After they had everything lined up. And because I checked the folders too early." "They panicked," Karen said. Someone realized the timeline was broken. The realization hit me hard. So the man in the lobby, he might have been sent to collect me before I found someone like you. Karen didn't answer, but the silence said enough. She took a slow breath, her hands trembling just slightly as she typed. "We need to get the rest of the data hidden. If they wipe the servers tonight, we'll lose everything." "Tonight?" I asked sharply. "Yes. Christmas Eve is the perfect time to erase data, minimal staff, low oversight, delayed audits. They've probably been planning to clear the system for weeks." I felt sweat gather at the back of my neck. "So we're racing against a full system wipe?" "Exactly." The tension in the room tightened again. Karen opened another file, but before she could continue, we heard something outside. A soft tap. Then another. Slow, deliberate footsteps approaching. Karen's eyes widened. She shut her laptop instantly, killing the screen. The footsteps grew louder. I held my breath. The storage room was small, with no other exit. If someone tried the handle, we had nowhere to go. Karen grabbed my arm and pointed toward the shelves. She started sliding boxes aside quietly. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "There's a hidden utility access behind these shelves," she whispered back. "Barely anyone knows about it. It leads to maintenance tunnels." The footsteps stopped right outside our door. My pulse hammered, so hard I thought whoever was outside could hear it. The doorknob twitched, just slightly. Then again, harder this time. Karen froze, one hand still on the shelf. The person outside pressed on the door, testing it. She mouthed one word. "Hide." I helped her push the shelf, just enough to reveal a small metal panel behind it. Karen knelt and tugged it open. The tunnel behind it was narrow and dark, but anything was better than being found. She motioned for me to go first. I climbed inside, careful not to make noise. She followed quickly, pulling the panel closed behind us just as the doorknob rattled again, harder, more insistent. Inside the tunnel, everything went black except for a faint glow from Karen's phone. We crouched low. The air smelled of dust and old wiring. Above us, we heard the door finally swing open. Someone stepped into the room. Their shoes scraped lightly against the floor. I could hear them breathing. Every second stretched into something painful, like the silence itself was tightening around us. Karen and I didn't move, didn't even blink. Then the person inside the room stopped right in front of the shelf that hid our escape panel. They stood there for a long moment. Too long. "Are they looking right at us?" I whispered in my head, terrified to even breathe too loudly. Finally, Karen leaned forward ever so slightly, shining the faintest sliver of light through a screw hole in the panel. Her expression shifted, fear mixed with recognition. I mouthed silently, "Who is it?" She swallowed hard and whispered so softly I barely heard her. "That's not security." The person took a slow step back. Then another. The air in the room shifted as they turned toward the door again. Footsteps moved away, disappearing down the hall. When everything was silent again, Karen slowly turned off her phone light. She leaned close, her whisper trembling. "He's not just looking for you anymore." "Then who is he looking for?" Her answer came after a long, heavy pause, each word slow and careful. "Both of us." A chill ran through me, so deep it felt like my entire body went cold. "Why?" I asked, and her final whisper before we crawled deeper into the tunnel made the air feel even tighter around us. "Because now they know I helped you." The darkness ahead felt endless, and the danger behind us was closing in fast. Everything that happened next felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet, as if every hour pulled me deeper into something I didn't fully understand. When I saw Mr. Dalton walk back into the hallway with that tight smile, the same one he used whenever he was hiding something, I felt the pressure in my chest climb again. He pretended not to see me, but I watched him slip into the conference room with two men I didn't recognize. They looked sharp, serious, the kind of people who didn't show up unless something big, and usually problematic, was going on. It only confirmed that whatever was happening in the company wasn't small, and somehow I was tangled in the middle of it. The office felt colder than usual, like all the warmth had been sucked out. I stayed back, pretending to check my phone, but really I was trying to read their faces through the glass. One of them kept pointing at a stack of documents spread out on the table, another kept shaking his head, and Dalton just sat there stiff, like he was bracing for impact. I knew then that the files I had, those confidential documents I'd saved months earlier because something fell off, were connected to something much bigger than my firing. And now, every instinct inside me screamed that Dalton feared what I might do. I moved away before anyone spotted me and walked toward the parking lot, but the tension followed me like a shadow. The winter air was sharp, and snow clung to the edges of my coat as I stepped into the cold. I unlocked my car, but instead of starting it, I sat in silence, watching the building through a foggy windshield. My breathing was uneven because I finally realized something. Dalton didn't fire me to replace me. He fired me to silence me. And yet, he had no idea what I had already seen and what I had already saved. The folders on my laptop weren't just harmless spreadsheets. They contained traces of financial movements that made no sense, files that had been edited and re-edited late at night, unauthorized transactions that were hidden behind misleading labels, and employee records that had been altered. At first, I kept them because I wanted proof that my workload had doubled without recognition. But the more I looked, the more I uncovered. And I wasn't even trying to dig deeper. The information revealed itself almost accidentally, like it wanted to be found. Now, sitting alone in my car with the heater humming softly, it hit me that this wasn't just a conflict between me and my boss. This was a storm waiting to break open, and I was right in its center. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, thinking maybe I should call someone, HR, a lawyer, anyone, but before I could decide, a notification popped up. It was a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence, "We need to talk. You're not safe." My stomach dropped. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank or some automated scam, but something about the timing was too perfect, too precise. And the worst part was that I couldn't tell whether the message meant someone was on my side or warning me to back off. I stepped out of the car again, pacing through the snow as the message replayed in my mind. I looked around the lot, hoping I'd see someone familiar, but everyone had already left for the long holiday weekend. The parking area was silent except for the distant hum of the city. For a moment, I wondered if maybe Dalton had planned things so carefully that even this message was part of a strategy. But no, he wasn't that subtle. His moves were predictable. Sloppy, even. This felt like someone else entirely. I kept walking until I reached the far edge of the lot. That's when I noticed a car I didn't recognize. Dark SUV, tinted windows, parked near the corner where the security cameras barely reached. I didn't remember seeing it earlier. I didn't know if someone was inside. But I knew they were watching me. My hands grew cold even through my gloves. This was no longer a workplace dispute. This was dangerous. I backed away slowly and returned to my car, locking the doors the second I got in. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, and I tried to convince myself that I was just imagining things. But every instinct I had, every tiny warning bell inside me, said that someone was keeping track of what I did next. I started driving, but instead of going home, I took a longer route through quieter streets, watching to see if the SUV followed. I took turns I didn't need to take, slowed down at intersections, pretended to pull into driveways. Every move was deliberate, but no matter how many tricks I used, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was tailing me, even if I couldn't see them. Finally, I reached a spot where I felt a little safer. An old parking lot by the frozen river, a place I used to go when work got overwhelming. I parked facing the water and leaned back in my seat, letting out a shaky breath. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "You're in danger because of what you know. Do not go home." This time, fear hit me so sharply I felt it in my throat. Whoever it was, they knew where I lived. They knew I had the files. They knew Dalton fired me. They knew everything. And they weren't warning Dalton. They were warning me. But why? Before I could type a reply, a loud thud hit the back of my car. I jumped, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My fingers trembled as I turned to look through the rear window, but the glass was fogged with cold. All I saw was the faint shape of someone standing behind my trunk. My breath caught as the outline moved, slowly, deliberately, toward the driver's side. I locked the doors again, even though they already were, then ducked low in my seat as the shadow reached my window. Whoever it was didn't knock, didn't speak. They just stood there, too close, like they knew I was terrified and wanted me to stay that way. And then, as quietly as they had arrived, the shadow stepped back and disappeared into the darkness. I sat frozen, listening for footsteps or an engine starting, but nothing came. Only silence. That silence was somehow worse. I stayed like that for several minutes before I finally glanced at my phone again. The screen lit up with one more message. "They're closer than you think." My chest tightened, because now I understood something far more dangerous than anything I suspected before. This wasn't just about Dalton's bad decisions. This wasn't about workplace politics or jealousy or even revenge. This was something hidden deep in the company, something someone was willing to protect at any cost. And I had accidentally uncovered the one thing they couldn't afford for anyone to see. The truth was no longer buried, and now neither was I. The moment I saw that last message on my phone, something inside me shifted. Instead of freezing in fear, I felt a kind of clarity come over me, like everything finally snapped into place. If someone was watching me, if someone wanted those files hidden, then the only way to protect myself was to bring everything into the open. I couldn't hide in the shadows anymore. I had to face whatever was coming. I started the car again and pulled out of the parking lot, driving with a focus that surprised even me. I didn't go home, and I didn't go back to the office. Instead, I headed toward the small co-working space downtown where I had once rented a desk for freelance work. It was quiet during weekends, but my old access code still worked. If someone wanted to follow me, they'd have a harder time once I got inside. The place was empty, only dim hallway lights glowing. I went straight to the back room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. My hands were shaking, but my mind was steady. I gathered every file, every document, every screenshot I had collected over the years. Financial reports that didn't match. Signatures that didn't belong to the people listed. Emails that had been deleted but still recoverable in the server logs. Patterns so obvious I couldn't believe no one else noticed. The truth hit me hard. The missing money, the altered records, the late-night edits, they weren't accidents or sloppy mistakes. They were intentional trails. Someone was funneling money out of the company quietly, using fake vendors and ghost accounts. And based on the timeline, it had been going on for years. I wasn't just fired on Christmas Eve because Dalton wanted me gone. I was fired because I had stumbled onto the largest internal fraud the company had ever seen. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud folder, added layers of encryption, and drafted a detailed summary to send to the authorities. My chest felt tight as I typed, but it wasn't fear anymore, it was adrenaline. I knew that once I sent this, nothing could be undone. Just as I was about to hit send, I heard footsteps outside the door. Slow, deliberate. They paused right outside, and my pulse spiked again. Someone had followed me after all. I held my breath as the handle turned slightly, then stopped. Whoever it was remained still for several seconds, like they were listening. I unplugged my laptop quietly and moved to the side of the room, trying to stay out of direct view of the door. The footsteps moved again, this time stepping away. I waited until the sound faded completely before exhaling. I knew then that time was up. I clicked send. In a matter of seconds, the files transferred to multiple recipients, federal investigators, a trusted journalist, and a backup account only I had access to. Once those files left my laptop, I felt something heavy lift off my shoulders. I wasn't powerless anymore. The truth was out there. But right as I was packing up, another message appeared on my phone. "They know what you sent." My stomach nodded, but before I could respond, the lights flickered. For a moment, I thought the whole building might lose power, but then the lights steadied. I hurried out of the room, my bag slung over my shoulder. I didn't care who followed me anymore. The evidence was already beyond reach. All that mattered was getting out safely. I made it to the stairwell when a voice echoed from below. "Stop. We need to talk." I froze. It wasn't Dalton's voice. It was deeper, calmer, almost familiar. I turned slowly and saw a man emerging from the shadows. He wasn't one of the suits I saw earlier, but he wasn't a stranger either. I recognized him from years ago, Marcus, the former head of internal security. He had left the company suddenly, without explanation. Everyone thought he retired. But seeing him now, I knew the truth was more complicated. "I've been watching this for months," he said quietly as he stepped closer. "What you found, it's bigger than just Dalton." My heart raced, but I didn't back away. "Then why warn me anonymously?" I asked. "Why not come to me earlier?" He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Because I didn't know who to trust. Dalton isn't the mastermind. He's just the one they use to sign things. The real operation involves people far above him. People who don't leave paper trails. You were the first one who noticed without being told." A chill ran through me. "So now what?" "They're coming for me." "Not anymore," he said. "You sent the files, didn't you?" I didn't answer, but he could see it on my face. "Good," he said. "Because once the federal office got them, the whole building lit up with alerts. They will investigate, and the people behind this can't stop it now. You did the right thing." I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. If what he said was true, then the danger wasn't over, but the power had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the one being hunted. As we walked down the stairs, Marcus kept talking, explaining bits and pieces, how he had been gathering evidence quietly How Dalton was only a convenient face to blame, how the missing funds connected to external shell companies tied to people with political influence. It felt surreal, like stepping into a movie. But I knew it was all real. When we reached the exit, cold air rushed in. Snow had started falling again, covering the ground with a fresh layer of white. I stepped out first, scanning the street for any suspicious cars. There was no SUV, no shadow watching, no one waiting, just silence. Marcus stopped at the doorway. "You should lay low for a while," he said. "They'll be more concerned about cleaning their own mess now. But still, be careful who you trust." I nodded, gripping my bag tighter. "Thank you. For the warnings. For everything." He gave a faint smile. "You weren't meant to be part of this. But sometimes the right person finds the truth at the wrong time." I turned to leave, but just as I took a step, he added one last thing. "Oh, and don't trust the journalist you emailed. She used to work with them years ago. They'll reach her before they reach anyone else." My entire body tensed. I slowly turned back, but Marcus was already walking away into the shadows. The relief I felt moments ago evaporated instantly. If he was right, if that journalist was connected, then not only did they know I sent the files, they knew exactly who I sent them to, and they would come looking for me again. The climax wasn't the end after all. I thought I had exposed everything. But somehow, I had just opened a door I wasn't supposed to see behind. The cold air stung my face as I stood there, realizing that everything I thought was resolved had just opened up another layer of uncertainty. Marcus's warning echoed in my head like a steady drumbeat. The journalist I trusted, someone I thought would protect the truth, was tied to the same network of people who had been hiding everything. For a moment, I felt the same fear I'd been carrying since the night Dalton fired me on Christmas Eve. But unlike before, I didn't feel powerless. The files weren't only in her hands. I had sent them to multiple places. Even if one link failed, the truth was already spreading. Still, I knew I couldn't stay out in the open. I walked quickly down the snowy sidewalk, trying to decide my next move. My breath formed white clouds in the air, and the snowflakes stuck to my coat and hair as if trying to hide me from anyone watching. I ducked into a small cafe nearby, not to drink anything, but just to have a quiet place to think. Only a few people were inside, the lights warm against the storm outside. I sat in the back corner and pulled out my phone again. There were no new messages, no warnings, no threats. For the first time that night, silence felt like a gift. I looked out the window and watched the snow fall harder. The world outside seemed softer, quieter, almost peaceful. The chaos of the last few hours felt distant, even though it wasn't over. But I finally understood something. I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing my steps now. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I flinched before I even looked at the screen, but when I finally checked, it wasn't a threat. It was an email notification from one of the federal agents I had sent the files to. My heart thudded as I opened it. The message was short but direct. "We received your documents. Do not contact anyone involved. We will handle the investigation. Stay somewhere safe. We may reach out once immediate actions are taken." A wave of relief washed over me, slow but steady. They had the information. They were taking it seriously, and they were moving quickly. Knowing that helped ease the weight I'd been carrying, even if the fear wasn't completely gone. I took a long breath and leaned back in my chair. The cafe played soft music, something gentle that reminded me of calmer days. For a moment, I allowed myself to just sit still, to feel my heartbeat slow down. Everything that had happened, the firing, the files, the unknown messages, the warnings, they all led me here. Not broken, not defeated, but stronger than I ever expected to be. After a few minutes, I decided to leave and check into a small hotel on the edge of town. Something quiet, something without too many people. I took a rideshare instead of calling anyone I knew. No connections, no risks. The hotel lobby was empty except for a clerk wrapping up the night shift. I checked in under my middle name and paid in cash, something I hadn't done in years. In the room, the heater hummed softly as I sat on the edge of the bed. It felt strange being alone without danger pressing right against me. My body felt heavy with exhaustion, as if the adrenaline had finally run out. I kicked off my shoes and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The world suddenly felt huge and unpredictable, but also strangely forgiving. I closed my eyes and tried to process everything all at once. Before I drifted off, I made one last decision. Tomorrow morning, I would call my parents, something I hadn't done in months because of how overwhelming work had been. I would tell them I was okay. I would tell them I needed some time away, maybe a break from everything. For 12 years, the company had been my whole life. It had shaped my days, my habits, my identity. And tonight, losing it felt terrifying. But now, lying there in the quiet hotel room, I realized it wasn't a loss. It was a release. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside covered in clean white snow. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat on the small chair by the window, and finally dialed my mother's number. The sound of her voice, warm, worried, familiar, hit me harder than I expected. I told her everything, not the dangerous details, but the important parts. That I left the job, that I needed some space, that I was ready for a fresh start. She didn't ask many questions. She only said she was proud of me. After the call, I felt lighter. The kind of lightness that comes from knowing you're not carrying the weight alone anymore. Later that day, the news broke. It wasn't detailed, but it was enough. A major internal investigation had begun at Dalton's company. Several executives were placed on leave. There were whispers of financial fraud, misuse of funds, and violation of regulations. Dalton's name wasn't mentioned directly, but I knew he was involved. I knew the truth was finally coming out. And I wasn't afraid. By the next week, more articles surfaced. This time, they highlighted whistleblowers, anonymous sources, and ongoing audits. It was surreal knowing the chaos behind those headlines had once been my daily reality. But the world kept turning. People kept moving. And for the first time in years, I wasn't stuck in that building's cold fluorescent light. I wasn't trapped under Dalton's impossible expectations. I wasn't unnoticed or unheard. I decided to use my experience to help others. I started a small blog sharing workplace advice, stories about burnout, warning signs of toxic leadership, and encouragement for anyone feeling stuck. I didn't mention the investigation or the files. I stayed vague about the details for safety, but I shared everything I had learned as a human being who had survived something heavy and unfair. To my surprise, people connected with it. They shared their own stories, getting fired unfairly, being overlooked, being mistreated by bosses who never appreciated them. I realized then that my story wasn't rare. My pain wasn't unique. But my escape, my courage, my decision to stand up, that was something I could help others see in themselves. Weeks later, I received one final message from Marcus. It wasn't a warning this time. Just a simple note. It's over. They're facing consequences. You were the turning point. Take care of yourself. I stared at the screen for a long time before I finally smiled. I deleted the files from my laptop, from my drives, from everywhere. Not because I was running from them, but because I didn't need them anymore. The truth was out. Justice was moving. And I wanted to move forward too. One snowy afternoon, I walked along the river, the same river where I had once hidden in fear, unsure if I would survive the night. Now the water looked peaceful, flowing steadily in the winter sun. My breath formed slow clouds as I took in the silence. This time, silence didn't scare me. It comforted me. I realized then that life isn't just about what you lose. Sometimes, the things that fall apart are the things that free you. Sometimes, the job you thought defined you is the very thing holding you back. And sometimes, the courage you discover in your darkest moment becomes the beginning of a better life. I took one last look at the river and let the cold breeze wash over me. I had survived a firing on Christmas Eve. I had uncovered truth people tried to bury. I had faced danger I never imagined. But more importantly, I had found myself again. And that was the ending I never expected but absolutely needed.